Hey, we're on chapter 13 this week and getting really, really close to the end here of the semester, believe it or not. Chapter 13, this starts our evolution-based chapters on a variety of different levels. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started with that right now. Okay. All right. So again, this is chapter 13, and the topic is population evolution. All right, I'm gonna give my speech that I do every semester when it comes to evolution. Let me move some stuff around on my desk here. Actually, let me type out real quick. I'm gonna share something else. I'm gonna do this. See if I can find the image. Yeah, this is it. Okay, so most of us have probably seen this image. This image, which is showing something that's basically an ape that's progressing to the modern man. It's been used for a long time, but it does not accurately portray what evolution is. And the other issue with it is that it doesn't portray evolution for any other species. So what I ask for these chapters, especially as we get started, is that you keep an open mind, because a lot of times the definition that we have of evolution growing up or in our minds is not actually what evolution is, okay? There's a lot of emphasis put on human evolution and Charles Darwin. And I'll cover that a little bit about Darwin, and we will go into human evolution. Usually it's the last chapter I do. But those two things, human evolution and Darwin, have almost become synonymous, to the point that, at least in regular, pop culture, Darwin means human evolution. And everything else that Darwin came up with gets lost, okay? I will tell you briefly that Charles Darwin was first studying to be part of the clergy in England, and that he really enjoyed being outdoors and sketching living things that were outside: plants, animals, insects, anything and everything he found. He loved to sketch. And then he would make observations about their physical appearance. And he would make observations about how one individual from a species differed from another, okay? He was very interested. So interested, in fact, that one day, one of the other clergy at the school he was attending, one of the teachers, the instructors, came and told him that he thought Darwin would actually probably enjoy being a naturalist more than being a member of the clergy. And this man helped Darwin get set up as a ship's naturalist on something called the HMS Beagle. I don't know if any of you have ever seen this movie, because it probably came out in around 2000. It's called Master and Commander. It has Russell Crowe in it, and Paul Bettany, who you may recognize as playing Vision in today's Marvel films. And it's actually a really good depiction. The movie's long and slow, but it's a really good depiction of what a ship's naturalist did. They would be part of the ship, part of the crew, and anytime that the ship made a stop, the naturalist would get out and start observing anything and everything, all the wildlife, all the vegetation, making observations, everything. kind of how scientists were exploring the world at the time, okay? So that's what Darwin was, and that's what he did. And as he traveled, he realized that he recognized a lot of the same types of organisms in his travels on different islands and different continents that he was already familiar with in England. And that made him start wondering why he saw some differences between the ones, especially on the mainland, versus the individuals that he would see on islands. Over time, he came to develop this theory called natural selection, or about natural selection, where he began to believe that nature chooses those organisms that are best suited to live in their environment. And we'll go into this in more detail. This is just kind of an overview for a minute. As nature selects those individuals who are best suited, the population evolves, okay? Evolution then is change in a population over time. That's what evolution is. It's not just this picture that you see on the screen. And again, that's one of the big misconceptions, is that evolution, first off, is talking about, humans, and second, that it's this transformation of an ape to a human. And that's not accurate, nor is it a linear progression like what's being shown here. It's more of a tree with lots of different branches, okay? So again, as we progress, as we go through these chapters, regardless of what your personal beliefs are about evolution, which I have no problem with, because as I've probably said throughout the semester in various assignments, I'm not worried about your opinion on a personal or professional level. And I'm not here to tell you what your opinion should be. I'm worried that your opinion comes from a well-educated foundation. You know what I mean? I'm here to provide you with information. What you choose to do with it, or how you choose to feel about it, totally up to you, and fine by me, whatever it is. I just want you to have the information. And that's the truth with everything. When you leave this class and are just living in the world out there, I want you to be able to form opinions based off of an educated foundation, whether that's about vaccinations and if they're good or bad, whether it's about politics, whether it's about something happening in social media, whatever it is. I just want you to have a thought through opinion, okay? So that's what I'm looking for with evolution, as always, that you're able to come to your own conclusions based off of this information. So having said all of that, let me switch back to my whiteboard here, because I'm going to do one more thing that I do in class. You're going to find, as you study a little bit more, if you continue to study evolution at all, that you kind of have a divide. You tend to have a group of individuals who generally relate to creation and are creationists, and they think evolution isn't possible. And then there's evolution, who says that creationists are superstitious, that they believe in something that can't be proved, and it kind of gets lumped into this superstition, not paranormal, I can't think of the other word, which I should, because anyway, I can't think of the other word, but just something that has no solid credibility, right? Usually, those things feel mutually exclusive. In other words, there's a lot of pressure to decide if you're a creationist or an evolutionist, right? And no matter what you choose, the other group thinks you're full of crap. I don't think that. And there's a group of people in the science community, that's a terrible line, that don't believe that either. There may not be a ton of us, but basically, if I were to put creation on one end here and evolution on the other, I feel that in coming to a decision about this, you don't have to pick one or the other. You can fall any place along this kind of spectrum, is how I think about it, right? You might be a creationist who thinks that there was a higher intelligence that put all of life in motion, but that maybe that higher intelligence used evolution to let life happen, right? So maybe you're over here somewhere. You could be somebody that primarily believes in evolution, but thinks that maybe there was an intelligent being that kind of at least watched over it or had a hand in it, right? You could stand firmly on the creation end or firmly on the evolution end, or you could fall right here in the middle and think, heck, I think it was a mix of both. It doesn't matter where you stand. It doesn't matter where you are on this line. I've found a lot of conflicted students and other instructors, because this is something that when you teach it, it's obviously something that you put a lot of thought in. And so over the years I've been teaching, I've had a lot of conversations about this. And I found that there's just a lot of people that feel conflicted over trying to decide if they're creationist or if they're an evolutionist. And I just don't feel like they need to be mutually exclusive. I feel like you can have a combination of this and it's fine. It's okay. You don't have to pick one or the other. If you stand more on the creation side but think evolution played a role, that doesn't make you not religious. If you're an evolutionist that thinks that there was an intelligent being that oversaw it, that doesn't make you believe in the supernatural. That's the word I was looking for. It's just having this open mind to the possibility that obviously we don't know everything. We have evidence for evolution, but just like anything else that happened in the past, we can't prove it. There are examples of evolution happening today, which we'll get into as we reach those chapters, but not on the scale of watching necessarily, a new species of human come to take over. Okay. All right. That's my stance. And as always, and as I've said, this is a big deal to me. It doesn't matter where you stand. Your opinion is your opinion. I just want you to have formed it thoughtfully and for yourself. Okay? It's never my job or my interest in trying to tell you what you should and shouldn't believe or where you should and shouldn't stand. If you have questions over this, as always, please feel free to ask. In class, we do end up having quite a few discussions as we go along. I know that people tend to be a little bit uncomfortable talking about evolution because it can be charged in the sense that the groups historically have been quite divided between creation and evolution. If you have questions or comments on this, you can email me, you can post it in a discussion forum. Regardless of how you talk about it or if you talk about it, I always just ask that you please be respectful of somebody else's beliefs, okay? All right. There, that's my introduction to evolution, asking you to please remember that evolution is change in a population over time. That's the definition. Okay, we can see that this has happened, even if we just look at the fact that species go extinct, even if we look at the fact that species become endangered. That is a change in a population over time, right? That's evolution. Okay. All right. We got to go over some terms as we talk. First one I'm going to go over is species. We use this term a lot, but basically what it means is a group of individuals can successfully interbreed. All right. I got to pause here. When it comes to evolution, the only thing that matters is successful reproduction. Just remember that from here on out, like for all the chapters, successful reproduction, okay? That means that you're not only able to mate, but you produce offspring. not only do you produce offspring that are healthy and can create their own offspring, okay? If you mate and don't create offspring, you didn't successfully reproduce. If you mate, create offspring that can't reproduce as well, you failed, okay? This is all about passing genes on from one generation to the next. Everything with evolution, successful interbreeding, okay? All right, now let's talk about a term that we use all the time in everyday conversations. Good grief, why? But has a slightly different meaning in science. Okay? A population is a group of individuals who all live in the same place at the same time. So if you're talking about a population of, if you're talking about the animal population of St. George, that term is going to be too broad, because notice that in science, a population is a group of individuals of the same species, okay? So you can talk about the coyote population of St. George. You can talk about the tortoise population of St. George, as long as you're talking about the specific species, okay? And then when it comes to the same place at the same time, same place is kind of obvious. You're talking about just St. George. You can expand that to talking about southern Utah, as long as southern Utah is defined and has a set of what do I want to say, boundaries that define it as southern Utah. Same time, that means I can talk about a population of desert tortoises in 2020, or I can talk about a population of desert tortoises in 1920. Either way, I have to clarify that, okay? So that's what this term means in science. Let me get back here. What else needs to go over? All right, so let's talk about natural selection. I told you a little bit about Darwin, where he came from. Darwin was considered a gentleman scientist in the sense that he was part of the class of individuals who were independently wealthy in England at the time, in the 1800s. He had family money, and so he could quite literally afford to explore, nature. He didn't have to go find a profession. That's kind of how he ended up as a naturalist. Okay, so natural selection. So in natural selection, it says that not every individual in a population is going to have the best set of traits to survive, okay? The ones that have really good traits for that environment are way more likely to live. And then those traits that are really good that let them live in their environment get passed on when they successfully interbreed. Over time, those really good traits for the environment kind of become more prevalent in the population, at which point you say that evolution has occurred, okay? Let me give you a really basic example of this. If I can switch to my drawing thingy. All right. This is a real life example. It's pretty basic. I like it a lot. During the Industrial Revolution on the East Coast, a lot of factories started burning coal and things like that to fuel their machinery. And it caused a lot of the trees in the area that have a natural whitish bark, caused a lot of the trees to be stained with charcoal dust. So we had originally white trees, Yay, there's my tree. It's not a beautiful tree, guys. Look, I'll even put in a little thingy. Tree. Okay, so we had naturally white trees. And then eventually, we ended up with our trees that became stained with soot, essentially. Okay. So their light bark color was covered up. In this, forest where all these trees are, there's a species of moth. And the species of moth comes in two varieties. Light wings. Here's my moth. I am so artistic. And dark wings. Okay. I don't even know anymore. Light-winged and dark-winged moths. Okay. When we're in this environment where the trees are their natural light shaded bark, which type of moth or which wing color from a moth is more likely to survive on these trees? If you said the light colored moth, you're right, because it kind of blends in with the tree bark, right? Okay, that means that it's not as likely to be picked up by predators, birds who are also living in the area, because these dark wings stand out, right? Obviously, they're gonna stand out against a white tree really a lot. And so it's easier for predators to eat them. Over time then, what happens is you end up getting a lot more light-winged moths than dark-winged moths. I don't even know what I'm drawing anymore. They look like kidneys. It's a kidney moth. Okay. And you just have kind of a few of our dark-winged moths here and there. We can say that this population over time has evolved because we have mostly light-winged moths because they're the ones best suited for their environment. They lived in higher numbers. They reproduced successfully in higher numbers, passing on that light wing color to their offspring, who also live in higher numbers. Natural selection. Okay? Now, as the Industrial Revolution happens, talked about the tree bark changing colors. What do you think is going to happen to our moth population? Right now, we mostly have light-winged moths because the trees were all light, but now they're stained with soot. What's going to stand out more against our new soot-stained trees? White moths or dark moths? Well, obviously it's been reversed because now the light-winged moths are the ones that stand out like crazy and they're getting eaten in huge numbers, which means the dark-winged moths are the ones that are now living more, successfully reproducing and passing on their genes for dark wings to their offspring who are also living more, longer, in higher numbers. Evolution. And it's a response to the environment, okay? So evolution isn't something that just happens because. It's responding to whatever's happening in the environment. If you think about the Ice Age and all of the species that died out at the end of the Ice Age, that happened because natural selection couldn't, well, how do I want to put that? The species couldn't adapt fast enough to keep up with the changing environment. So in a way, it kind of was natural selection that caused the extinction. Those species were no longer suited to live in their environment, and they couldn't adapt fast enough to survive it, so they died out. Okay, that's natural selection, and natural selection drives evolution. Hopefully that made sense, because I can't see your faces. I'll just clear all of it. Can't see your faces to know if it made sense. Okay. Bring back my text box here. All right, so let's talk about adaptation for a minute. Notice that the definition for evolution is change in a population over time. Adaptation, we're referring to the traits that an organism has and that a group of organisms have. So the traits that are changing over time. As traits change over time in a population, evolution happens, okay? All right. I'm going to stop this lecture here because I'm going to be moving into kind of a different chunk. So this will be the end of lecture 1, and I will see you soon.